That was so awesome that they gave us the leftovers and the free hiker breakfast. That was so cool. Now it's 9 o'clock, bit of a late start, but that's life. We're headed up to Mount Washington today. When I said, because we weren't gonna make it to Cloudland Hut, or Lake of the Clouds, I mean, because of that we were gonna not do Mount Washington the next day, I was wrong. A lot of people camp at Lake of the Clouds. They stay in a place called the Dungeon. Cold and dark, apparently. That's the closest spot you can camp to Mount Washington. But since the weather is clear today, what a miracle, that's not super necessary. We should get there around 1 or 2. Pretty exciting.
First
I
try.
doubted myself. I was like, it might take a minute.
45 and 2 zigzags. Baby, that's all we need. We can go to the bar after dark. Smoke that tumbleweed.
It's 8:30 and I'm 0.8 away from a hut where we were gonna beg to ask if we could sleep on their floor. Some of my friends are already up ahead and they texted me and said we aren't gonna be able to. They also said Smokemaster's not there yet, and I'm like, he's always faster than me, so where did he go? I'm walking down piles of boulders. I'm off trail. I can't see any cairns, but it's not cold out, so it's better than I was picturing. I found my way back to the actual trail to explain more about Smoke. He doesn't have a phone because he wants to disconnect from technology and challenge himself. And it's a challenge for me too. The past 2 nights have been super cold, and I haven't been able to get to sleep for a long time because of them. I always go to bed wearing what I think is going to be warm enough, but then it's not warm, and then I have to put on all my clothes. Then I finally go to sleep, but when I wake up in the morning, it's like, oh my gosh, so hot. It's like my sleeping bag is working. It just takes a really long time for the insulation to heat up and get going. Now I stealth camped before the hut. I am going to stay at the hut and wait for Smokemaster because I know he would eventually be along. The hut was our meeting spot, so he wouldn't go past, so I'll just wait for as long as it takes him to reach it today.
Yeah, well, just take a phone video in case you get it.
It got to about 11:30 and I was packing my stuff up, about to leave, go to the bathroom one more time. I come out and who do I see? This guy right here. What happened? Where were you?
I took a side trail off of Mount Jefferson and I went like 2 miles, 1.5 miles down the mountain, and I saw this old sign, oldest sign I've ever seen in my life, and I was like, yeah, I'm not on the AT. The sun was going down and it was starting to get dark, so I just camped and woke up in the morning, hiked back up, and now I'm here. I did like an extra probably 5 to 7 miles just to start my day. All right, a note from the future to explain how Smoke got lost. That, with the cloud on top of it, is Mount Washington. And then we hiked down this saddle here, and at one point there was a trail that split off and it went down into where you see almost that vertical rock face. But he didn't go all the way down there, but that's when the sun set and he was like, okay, I'll just set up camp here. Oh yeah, this ridge right here looks super beautiful in the sunset. So anyway, in the morning he woke up, got back on top of this saddle, hiked all of these peaks to in between there, I think, where Madison Hut was. And then the trail you see going down, that was that big rock pile we did the next day. Now we have 8 miles till a visitor center where we might go into town. If we get there before dark, that is.
My knee's hurting.
On another exciting episode of Talking Shirt, Smoke, actually a group effort, Smoke sewed up this part, then I made a patch out of my buff. I still have most of it, I'm not going to show you the inside because it's my hanky. The edges are just bad looking, whereas this is how it's supposed to look. I was like, I need some material that dries quickly. I can just use part of my buff. So that was that, although it is starting to tear again a little bit, but that's how the cookie crumbles. Although today I'm noticing my shoes are now ripping apart. So just one more thing. Thank goodness it wasn't raining today, because coming down that boulder pile and up it, and then when the boulder pile turned into a forest, that was so hard. I'm really sore, really exhausted. Only went like 6 miles today, but my goal is to be asleep by 9 p.m. Week 2 in the whites, done and in the books now. Let's look back on how it went. How I noticed the season and the landscape changing. I guess the landscape didn't change too much from the week before, but again, because it is the whites, it's extremely steep, extremely rocky. There are some parts that flatten out, honestly, but it's more moss. These kinds of trees where they're shorter and they're lichen on them and they look kind of old. The return of Old Man's Beard from North Carolina. Still seeing a lot of berries and mushrooms along the way. And of course the views, how could I forget? Definitely the most scenic, yeah, I guess that's fair. The most scenic part of the trail, the part where you can see the trail ahead of you or behind you, and that's really cool to see, because it makes you feel like, oh yeah, that's why it's so hard, because I'm walking a really long way. As far as the season changing, I was really cold some nights, but bear in mind I was up in elevation. I'm still noticing on deciduous trees the leaves changing too. Getting to be fall, even though it's the last week in August, we're still pretty far up in latitude, so fall comes early. Now, thinking about how the other hikers on the AT, how their week went, again, it's the whites, so you gotta, like, everyone's gonna slow down. Everyone was very thankful that it wasn't raining or that cold. Oh my goodness. My friend Vanilla, if you remember him from around like trail days and stuff, he is further ahead on the trail, and when he went through the whites, it looked like it was snowing or something. It looked so cold in the pictures he sent us back. So I was so glad for the nice weather. Everyone was so glad. Another thing that I noticed at first, and then I asked people if they were feeling it too, but it doesn't really feel like the same vibes as the rest of the AT. There's more people that are just coming up for the day or the weekend or a few days than there are AT Thru hikers. So that definitely changes the vibe, especially in the huts. You know, every place is different than others. Every person is different, but sometimes it gets the vibe of like, what are you all doing here? Some things that really made the AT what they were, like shelters, for example. There's paid campsites and there's AT huts, or AMC huts, or you could stealth camp. There's not like a gathering place of thru hikers, or just not necessarily thru hikers, but there's not a gathering place. You can't read the shelter logs, and of course just the pace of the days go a little differently because of the terrain. So yeah, definitely not the same vibe as the rest of the AT. It's also the point in the trail where Maine is getting close, and so people have been chatting about how they're gonna get back home. It's not like super close to the end yet, but it's like maybe a month away. It's in the back of people's minds. My favorite part of the week was the view from walking up Mount Washington. The top of Mount Washington was a little crowded, but I just felt so alive when I was walking up, and the view kept getting better and better. The way the mountains are like layers of mountains. Out west, you just usually, in my experience, I should say, see one jagged sheet of mountains. And here it's so cool to be like layers. I just love it. It's such a beautiful sight. It made me feel really alive. Even though I'm doing something hard, physically, emotionally, and mentally, it's still so beautiful. I don't mean that visually beautiful. I mean like it really means a lot. Last week I said the goal I wanted to make for this week was to hike hard when I could, accept the fact that I needed to rest or needed to wait for weather or something on the days I couldn't, and I guess I did that. I was kind of on the fence about waiting for weather that one day, but in the end, we got that beautiful day on Mount Washington, and like I said, that was my favorite part of the week. It was worth it, and I think I'm going to keep that goal for next week too. You just have to have that level of acceptance for you can have a vision for the trail, you can be ambitious, but it doesn't always turn out that way, and the less upset you can get, the more zen you can be, the better. What I learned this week, more of an observation, I guess. So the day we went over Mount Washington, you could stay at Lake of the Clouds hut, and it was kind of expensive, or you could camp at the Newman tent site. If you walked from the Newman tent site all the way up past Lake of the Clouds, Mount Washington, some other mountains, past the Madison hut, up and down to Osgood tent site, which was the next tent site, that would have been almost 15 miles over like really rocky, really tough terrain. So that's going tent site to tent site. If you stealth camp, you would probably be above tree line, and it's really windy. I know for a fact it's not the best place to camp. There's not a super good solution to where to camp in the Whites for AT Thru hikers. I'm surprised by that because the AT has been around for a long time, right? These huts have been around for a long time. I don't know if they've always been so expensive though. I just thought of that. That might be the reason why, but I'm surprised that there is not a better solution of where to camp. They did put out a itinerary of where you could camp, like hiking 15 miles on the day you do Mount Washington. I know for me that's just not realistic, and there were alternatives listed on that itinerary. Those weren't realistic for me either. I get the sense that there's been some bad blood between AT hikers and AMC staff members being like, oh, let us stay here. No! They use the funds they collect to preserve nature for the future, so I get that, but I'm also like, us AT people, we can't be paying hundreds of dollars every night. I guess some people do. There are AT hikers that are platinum blazing, they can afford to stay in the huts, and I hope they're having an awesome time because that looks so fun. I don't know what the rest of us are supposed to do. Just another challenge of the AT though. A logistical challenge this time. If it was easy, then it wouldn't be the AT. Will I ever make it out of the Whites though? Not sure. You'll have to come back and find out next week. Thank you for watching. Bye.